Hello, everybody. Welcome to Astropath's latest and greatest video, which is what I always like to say. Today, we're talking about Aquarius season. Before we get into that, let me just say that Astropath is a collaboration between Laurie Farrington of lauriefarrington.com, Astrolore Astrology, and also myself, Jenny Date at Hidden Path Astrology. And you can find me at hiddenpathastrology.com. And yeah, before, I guess we always kind of mention a couple projects we have going on. And I am in the middle of teaching a class about the moon and plan to be teaching more workshops coming up. But that's kind of it for me right now. Oh, and I will be posting an Aquarius season meditation to help you through this dramatic Aquarius season. But Lori, what do you have on offer?
Well, I guess we're still early enough in 2024 that I want to remind you that there is a 2024 guide up on Etsy. There'll be a link below that you can pick that up. I also there's one other thing I did want to mention. I just thought of, Jenny, and that is the fact that Jenny and I have talked about doing our own separate videos, and we're going to be. I actually have a few that hopefully I'm going to have up within the next week or so. So we're going to have our own individual playlists on the
Mm,
same channel, one for Jenny and one for me. So you can see some of our individual work as well. I think that's going to be really exciting. Other
mhm.
than that, I, I, I'm going to be offering a few other online workshops as well, but you'll hear about that later.
Yeah,
I'll
we'll get,
take that off.
yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, and thank you for mentioning the channel thing because that will enable you to find my meditations right here on the same YouTube channel, which are just audio, but they will be in video format. So thank you for bringing that up. It's perfect. So before we get into anything else, I think we've mentioned that like our videos. If there's anything else, any questions or comments you want to make, that's awesome. Please do. And let's talk for a second about the sun seasons.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, the seasons themselves. Okay.
Yeah.
So, it's really interesting if you think about the all of the signs from Aries all the way around to Pisces. There's 12 signs. And I think it's, sometimes people just think about the signs as these separate pieces. But really, they do form a cycle. You think about the ecliptic, that is the pathway that the sun looks like it follows around the earth, and each season is broken into three signs. So I think that's an important thing to understand. We moved into winter when the sun moved into Capricorn. Now we are in the fixed winter sign. So Aquarius is the fixed air sign. It is the second sign of winter. It is when winter has us tightly held. And then the last winter season will be Pisces, and then we'll move into the three spring signs.
Mhm.
I think
And
that's all I
kick
wanted
the
to say about that.
yeah. And that kicks the zodiac all back off again. So yeah, we just thought that would be a good thing to
Yeah,
mention as well.
mention that. Yeah, just to
Wow.
think about three signs for each season. I like thinking about that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so we are in Aquarius season. The sun is moving into Aquarius on January 20th. It's happening at 9:07 in the morning Eastern time, so please adjust for your time zone. And wow, it's going to pack a punch right from the get-go. But before we kind of start getting into all that, let's just talk about Aquarius. What is Aquarius? What does it mean? So yeah. What do you
Yeah,
got, Lori?
it's funny. Well, I just think that Aquarius is really misunderstood in a lot of ways.
Mm,
I think in modern astrology, when the outer planets were discovered and they were assigned rulerships of signs, I think we lost stuff. We lost
mm,
information that was really important.
mm.
And I know, growing up and learning astrology when I did, it was always considered that Aquarius was ruled by Uranus. And traditional astrology puts Saturn in the rulership of Uranus, of Aquarius. So really, to consider the difference between Uranus and Saturn, it was really difficult for me to change that understanding in my own mind when I first started looking at it from a little bit different perspective. But Saturn does rule Aquarius. Uranus is the co-ruler. So this kind of really changes our understanding of Aquarius. We used to think of, oh, the age of Aquarius when, it was all going to be rainbows and butterflies and everything was about advancement. And, Aquarius is the fixed air sign. It is a very highly intellectual sign. It does not have a lot of um, patience with um, what's the word I'm looking for, Jenny?
Feelings.
Feelings. Yeah, it's a very highly intellectual sign. It's not an
Mm,
emotional sign. There is one of the kind of more difficult things about Aquarius is that it can really detach from emotion. But, it also has that high, sharp level of intellect and vision.
mhm.
It's an
Yeah.
interesting sign.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is about Aquarius, like Aquarius is the inventor. Aquarius is totally brilliant. It can think of solutions way beyond what conventional thinking would allow. It can really look way outside of the box, and think beyond. I always think of as a fixed air. I'm always trying to liken these things to things we have in nature. And so to me, the fixed air is like the stratosphere, because the stratosphere is that really high level of air or of the atmosphere that doesn't change much. All of the weather happens lower down, closer to the planet. So up in the stratosphere, there's not a whole lot of change. It just has this view. And that is like Aquarius as a fixed sign. It is not prone to change. It's very much looking at that big, broad view. And you're right, like when Aquarius is out of balance, it can become completely detached. And that's sort of the irony, because one of the best manifestations of Aquarius is its humanitarianism, the idea of thinking about all of us on this planet together as a collective and what needs to happen for the whole group, and really thinking in this broad-minded type of way, which is amazing and brilliant. The problem becomes, though, when it becomes detached, it actually is like becomes detached from true humanitarianism, and it can no longer be connected to the collective. And that is when it becomes um is a little bit similar to Capricorn. It becomes like tyrannical. It becomes really almost like perverse is the word we're talking about. And it's really interesting because there's a lot of things when you study like Nazi Germany, there's a lot of Aquarian um symbols in that whole situation of individuals involved in that situation, and so on. And so we don't want to sugarcoat it. Like that is the broadness of what Aquarius can work with.
Yeah.
um Now in each of our individual lives, Aquarius can really be a gift because it can provide us this brilliant viewpoint. It can provide us with out of the box solutions. But it's also a place where we must be careful about not becoming so detached that we become alienated from the collective and from the group and your community.
I think, yeah,
Mhm.
alienation is a really important thing to think about with Aquarius because, yeah, it, if our view gets too expansive, too future oriented, we, yeah, we become detached, we become alienated from the present.
Mhm.
Aquarius it's the sign of the future. It really takes us into, and it's also the sign of technology.
Mhm.
Technology never would develop without Aquarius. We need that high intellect and that detachment to go into, wild technology. No
Yeah.
mistake that,
Mhm.
yeah, AI kind of
Yeah.
blew up when Pluto first stepped in there last spring.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to talk a little bit more about that. Because I mean, certainly Aquarius is really concerned with making social change, and ultimately, in its best manifestation, Aquarius is completely democratic. It absolutely wants there to be group participation. And it really is a symbol for that type of progressive thinking where it's inclusive and it's bringing everybody to the table, and so that's it really does hold that status, which is really awesome. And it is a fascinating time right now because there's so much going on with that. I did want to mention one thing because this happens to me a lot, probably happens to you too, where people get confused. They think Aquarius is a water sign
Mm.
because the symbol is the water bearer, like the pot pouring out water. And I just want to dispel that. Like it is not a water sign. It's absolutely an air sign. But I do think it's interesting. I don't know the history of the water bearer, but what I do know is that when you think about those democratic ideals, the idea of bringing water to the people, like making sure people have this absolute basic necessity of water, which is your agriculture, which is your hydration, the ability to be clean, like all of these things tie in with that. So I don't know if you know more about the water bearer icon, but that just wanted to dispel that myth.
Yeah, I'm really, really happy that you said that,
Mhm,
because a lot of people do think that Aquarius is a water sign, and Aquarius is about as far from a water sign as you can get. And I
mhm,
don't know, but I have always made the same assumption that water
mhm.
bear is, bringing to the people what is needed. And
Yeah.
I mean, all of the signs have a positive and a more negative, challenging side to them. And yeah, look, Aquarius is a beautiful sign. Where would we
Mhm.
be without it? We'd be in the
Yeah.
dark ages. And yet we do have to bring some caution to it. And if you know people that have like really strong Aquarius signatures in their
Mhm.
chart, I remember always being kind of confused that my Aquarius brother had such a like hard edge, like Satyrian edge.
Mhm.
And it's like, oh, it's ruled by Saturn. No wonder,
Yeah.
he's wild and so much about humanitarian, and yet there's this
Mhm.
very stoic quality that
Yeah.
can also come with
Mhm.
Aquarius. It's a
Yeah.
fascinating sign. It's one of my
I
favorite
know.
signs.
I know I think one way that I really like that you're bringing Saturn into it, because that's also, it took me a while as well to kind of take that on board. But you're right. Once you do, there's no going back. You really recognize how much the Saturn influence works. And one of the best descriptions I heard was, I'm pretty sure it was Austin Coppock, who's on Chris Brennan's podcast there, and he really talked about, Saturn being the wall and around a city, of a walled city, and inside the wall you have Capricorn, all the tradition and the rules and the things that are within, and then Aquarius is everything outside of the wall, like everything new and the stuff that's out there, and like maybe some foreign influence and like the kind of the unknown. But that the planet Saturn is kind of holding that separation between what's inside and what's outside. And that really helped me understand it better. And helped me understand why Aquarius is like, has all these innovative ideas, and it's like looking at the future, because you need both. You need protection inside the city, and then you also need to allow trade and, new things to come in and new people to come in to kind of let things evolve and advance, which is what ultimately I think Aquarius is trying to do.
That's
So,
awesome. I
yeah.
hadn't heard that. I like that. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Okay, are we ready to open the chart?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, let's open up the chart of the moment that the sun enters Aquarius. And here it is. I'm gonna kind of give you a little circle around that so we can see it. Here is the sun coming into Aquarius. But what do we see here, Jenny?
Okay, so
Whoa,
this is Aquarius season unlike any other, I would say, because
absolutely.
the sun moves in at 9:07 into Aquarius, and at 7:50 p.m. later that day Eastern time, Pluto moves into Aquarius. So they conjunct in Capricorn at 29:59 Capricorn, before the sun moves in, and then, here we are in Aquarius season. So this is really powerful. I mean, Pluto is this very slow moving planet. We made a whole video about what it means to go into Aquarius, and we're going to make another one about its successive movements. So this is a very powerful symbol of change, and that change is coming about through that Aquarius lens, through the progressive lens, the humanitarian lens, the technology lens, the possibility of things being alienated lens. You know, it all just kind of depends. But that is what is happening right now. This is a major shift in society. I think you can certainly see things out there, other astrology videos and podcasts and so on, that really address how this is a symbol for AI, how we're moving into this whole new framework of technology. And it's amazing. The timing, astrology is amazing because the timing really went right with last time Pluto went into Aquarius, and then it went back into Capricorn, and new things came back into focus. And then here we are going back. So can't talk about it without talking about that.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And I think it's important to understand that, Pluto moves so slowly. And the slower the motion of a planet, the more profound the change. Because I think of like really quick moving planets are like a weekend guest, right?
Yeah.
But the slower a planet is, the longer it stays and the more change that it's going to bring to the table. Now, Pluto has been in Capricorn since what, 2008?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Hmm.
And it's
Hmm.
going to be in Aquarius. Ultimately, it's going to be in Aquarius till 2043, I think,
Hmm.
is the date. So Pluto, because of the little retrograde, it dipped in last spring, it dipped back out, and now it's coming back in. It's going to make one other tiny dip, but we will talk about that another time. For now, it's going to be in here until September. And for this Aquarius season, these two, the Sun and Pluto, just step in there side by side, holding hands.
Yeah. It's
Wow.
really potent. And what it does is it sets the stage for, as Mercury, Venus, and Mars are all going to move into Aquarius as well, and they're each going to have a meet and greet with Pluto before they're going to be allowed into Aquarius. So that's really a symbol for just each of those things having to really dig in and kind of get to the bottom of the matter before they're going to be allowed into Aquarius, is almost how I'm thinking about it. Pluto being a gatekeeper. Um, and I don't know, it's just super powerful. It just really is suggesting that there's no free lunch here, that you're just going to have to recognize that there's major change afoot, there's major transformation happening, and it's sort of like we all are trying to figure out, how do we align with this process? We can't fight this process, we can't change it, but we can work to align with it, because change is inevitable and change is everything. And for us humans, we have such a struggle with change, and yet it's so powerful. It's how we evolve. It's how we move into all these new places. So that's kind of what's on the agenda.
It's so interesting. It makes
Mm,
me feel like I need to go back. If
mm,
anyone has access to Howard Sasportas's book, The Gods of Change, I think
mm.
now would be a really good time to read. Oh my goodness, excuse me. That's a little
Yeah,
embarrassing. Um,
that's a great book, though. I do have that book. I got a reprint of it not long ago, so I think you can find it. But he's very eloquent. That Howard Sasportas. He passed away in the '90s. A great
yeah.
astrologer.
Oh,
But
and
yeah,
that
it's a great book.
that book is amazing around the outer planet transits. And he talks about the crisis of Pluto. And, Pluto really does demand that we go so deep. So, when we think about these planets all having to go through Pluto as the gatekeeper, yeah, it's a big deal as they're approaching. There's like, oh, I've got to meet Pluto. Pluto's like the god of the darkness. Yeah, it's
Mm,
hard to yeah, it's
mm,
hard to underestimate the profound
mhm.
shift, the
Yeah.
profoundness of what Pluto's change is
Hmm.
going to bring. Think back to 2008, how much has changed in the realm of Capricorn in your own chart, where Capricorn is, how much has profoundly changed in that area.
Mm.
And yeah, in the coming
Yeah.
years,
Hmm.
wherever this is, anyway, here we go.
Well, one of the challenges I just want to say, because we do need to kind of address the idea that there's a lot of fear coming up, right? Like we all can feel change. We can feel dramatic change. There's, climate change happening. There's changes to our society. There's changes to our governments. There's, that are all kind of hovering, and it's really difficult. And so, not trying to downplay that at all, but also wanting to say that part of the trouble here is that our society doesn't really want to deal with this energy at all. Especially if you're living in the US. I feel like the US is the country of bright and shiny, and it doesn't really want to look at this harder stuff. But the thing is there's a lot of power here. There's a lot of regeneration here. There's a lot of ability to restore and go deeply within so that you may be reborn, so that you may step into a new world. I mean, there's a lot of that kind of signification that goes on with Pluto too. There's other cultures that have, like the goddess Kali is a goddess that is like Pluto. And I would think that, Pluto, I don't think of it as really a god or a goddess. I think of both of this transformative energy, but how things have to kind of be wiped clean in order for something new to happen. I mean, it's kind of like an example in nature is like when a fire comes in into a forest, and then there's seeds that were waiting for that so they can actually sprout. They really needed that fire to come in, clean out the brush so that they could take form. And those are the powerful redwood trees I'm thinking about in California. So that's just an image to kind of understand better.
Yeah, and there's so many examples of that if we
Mm.
pay attention. I think about this plant that I have that I love. And one time I went away and I forgot to water it before I left, and I came back and the whole thing was dead. It seemed dead. And yet I watered it, and 3 months later it was, so much more than it had ever been. And there's so many instances in our lives where destruction has to happen in order for new growth. Exactly. And
Mhm.
that's so important to consider that with Pluto.
Yeah, and maybe something that needs to be destroyed are the cancer cells. I mean, you have to take on board the idea that there are things that need to be removed or destroyed in order for life to continue. And, we'll get more into these topics when we make our Pluto video. But the other thing I want to say is we talked about Saturn being the ruler. And what's awesome about Aquarius season is Saturn's, ruling all these planets, and Saturn's in Pisces. So even though there isn't soft and fuzzy involved with Aquarius, but the ruling planet of Saturn is in soft and fuzzy Pisces, where it is taking compassion, it is thinking about the suffering of other people and trying to alleviate that and wanting that to be part of what the solutions are. So I really like that. Last time we had Aquarius season, Saturn hadn't quite moved into Pisces. It was also in Aquarius, so it was more harsh. There's a softer edge.
Mm.
And there's also throughout the season, as we'll discuss, there's numerous healing opportunities on little levels of healing how we use our energy on small, in small ways that can be extremely helpful and transformative. So I wanted to add that.
Well,
So
I'm glad you brought that
mhm,
up. Yeah, that's great.
mm,
Awesome.
yeah.
Okay, let's just very quickly, if we can do anything quickly, Jenny.
No, we don't know how.
Let's just go through, week by week. And when we talk about week by week, we're not going like Monday through Monday. We're going from um we're using the moon phases as separation points. We also want to, yeah, we want to talk about that new moon, don't we?
Yeah, we will get to that. Let's really talk about that as we get into it, or I guess now's a good moment to make that disclaimer that Lori and I are no longer going to make new moon videos. We're going to incorporate them into these so that you're not getting the double, thing of what is Aquarius doing in your chart. You're going to get it all at once, and that'll free us up to make other cooler videos. So, so there's our disclaimer. But
Very
it's not until later in the season, so we'll talk about it. It's on February 9th, and yeah, what do you think, Lori?
Yeah, I think that's great. I think
Okay.
that's great, and we'll talk about it when we get there.
Fab.
Okay, so for now, and I realize I didn't make a list to put up here for folks, which I have sometimes in the past, but we've got that first little space of time between when the sun goes into Aquarius on January 20th, and when we have the full moon on January 25th, which we will make a video about the full moon. Okay.
Hmm.
So really what goes on in those first 5 days of the season is all that stuff we talked about, the sun conjuncting Pluto, the sun moving into Aquarius, and then Pluto moving into Aquarius. All of that happens on the 20th. And then on the 23rd, the next thing that happens is Venus heads out of Sagittarius and into Capricorn.
Lovely. Yep. And then on the 25th, we have the full moon.
Right. Right before that full moon, we have Mars squaring Chiron. We wanted to kind of mention that a little bit, didn't we?
Sure. Yeah.
That's on the 25th. And, you know, an interesting thing, when I first opened up this chart, one of the things that really jumped out at me is the fact that Chiron and the North Node are conjunct. And this really
Hmm.
just suggests to me this, you know, we are really heading in the direction of so much importance of healing work, and thinking about the fact that the nodes do not go the same direction as the planets, they go the opposite direction. So really the North Node and Chiron are moving together to meet. They have not met yet. Um,
Nice.
so that's, yeah, there's a real push toward healing around some Aries type issues of aggression and that sort of thing.
Like how to use your assertive energy in a good way.
Right.
Sure is a lot of it out of balance.
There's an awful lot of it out of balance, and this really does give some hopefulness to me around that healing work that we all need to be um, working on together. And so that Mars in a square aspect to Chiron on the 25th, right before the full moon, like less than an hour before the full moon. That's
Hmm.
interesting. So we'll probably
Yeah.
talk about that more when we do the full moon video. But, you know, a square aspect, people think of it as being negative, but it's not. It's really just a statement of there's something that needs to be accomplished here. What the heck?
Yeah. It's like a statement of effort, really is how I think about it.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah. And then the full moon is just, we will make a video about it, but just real quick, it's funny because the moon is going to be opposite all these other things in Leo. That's kind of a bright spark, I think. Like nice little bright spot there. And then um so then once we hit the full moon, we're going to go into our next kind of week here, which goes from the full moon until we hit the last quarter square in Scorpio. So during that week, we have Mercury echoing Mars there and squaring Chiron. So that's just bringing the mindset into all of it. And then we have a really, to me, the busiest little set of days for the entire season, which is January 27th through the 29th.
Mhm.
In that space of time, a whole bunch of things are happening. The sun is going to square Jupiter, which is, we like that. That's it's a square, but it's got some grounding and healing to it. And then Uranus is going to station direct. And once that happens, that means all the planets are going to be direct. So what that implies is just this forward momentum that we have that we're holding on to. So lots of things are moving forwards. I mean, this is like things are picking up speed. Things are moving forwards on a lot of levels. Um, and then you also have the Mercury Mars conjunction in that period. And that's when those two, this is their third time meeting. Mercury had its retrograde cycle, and they met in Scorpio, and then they met in Sagittarius, and then now they're meeting in Capricorn. It's some kind of process that you've been involved in over the last few months, that is coming to its final place.
And isn't it interesting that in their final conjunction, you know, they have both just squared Chiron?
Yeah,
You know,
good
and
point.
when you think about, you know, Chiron's in Aries, which is ruled by Mars. So there's a real resonance there of the work that you're doing on your mind to heal this inner aggression or however you want to think about that's really interesting. And I just
Hmm.
want to add one more touch on that Uranus stationing direct on the 27th is it's at 19 degrees Taurus. So just pay special attention
Hmm.
if you have anything in your natal chart that is right around 19, 18, 19, 20 degrees of the fixed signs.
Hmm. Yeah, good
So
point.
yeah, think about that. And the fixed signs again would be Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind as well. Now back on to
Hmm.
it, Jenny. There's so much going
Right.
on here that week.
I know this is a thick little period of time. You also are going to have both, Mercury and Mars are also going to square the North Node. So it's kind of those two things
Mhm.
together, squaring the North Node and Chiron. Um, and then one thing that's interesting in this period is we have Venus sextiling Mercury, I'm sorry, Saturn. Now that is one of the few contacts of Saturn in this whole period. So Venus by then will be in Capricorn, and it's just going to have this nice little hello to Capricorn. I mean,
I'm
gosh,
here
get a
to
grip,
support you.
Saturn.
I'm here to
Yeah.
stabilize things a little bit.
Yeah. So we
Lovely.
like that. That's really nice. And then you have Mercury trining Uranus and Venus trining Jupiter. So I don't know about you, Lori, but to me, this is kind of heralding the whole, now that now that Jupiter's direct and Uranus is direct, and we're working on that conjunction. Jupiter is very much heading towards Uranus. That is a really important conjunction that's
Oh,
bringing up a lot of things.
yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
kind of touching on that in a good way.
Yeah. And another thing I want to just throw in here is that, when that trine between Venus and Jupiter happens, Venus will be in Capricorn as well. So if you look at the house that holds Capricorn in your chart and the house that holds Taurus in your chart, there's a real flow of energy between these two areas of your life during this week here. There's a lot of ability to accomplish really practical things in that area
Nice.
of your life.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
nice.
And then the final touch on those little three little really busy days is Mars also trining Uranus. So that kind of brings in your willpower, your action, and that is a very productive time. I agree. Like this, very curious to see what those 3 days are like. It is falling on a weekend, so just check out that weekend, that last weekend in January. Notice what's going on. And then it all concludes with that last quarter square of the moon phase in Scorpio. Um, and little touch there of Mercury sextiling
Yeah,
Neptune, bringing in a little
Neptune.
imagination, a
Yeah.
little dreaminess to all of it.
There's a
Very helpful.
lot of nice stuff going on that week. That's really,
Hmm.
really great.
Yeah,
It's sort of, yeah, that's
yeah.
before the other planets meet Pluto.
I know. Yeah. So that week is interesting. I don't know. I see that as being very productive and kind of like it's almost like battening down the hatches a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
what things do can you batten down a bit in the face of all this change? What are the supportive structures in your life that you can maintain? Like, these might be connections with loving people, or habits that you have that are helping you, like the way that you eat, or the getting enough exercise, or meditating, or these are the sort of things that you're thinking about in this time period. Like, I like that kind of idea, battening down the hatches a little bit.
Yeah, in a
Yeah.
real practical way in
Yeah.
those earth signs. So yeah, be sure to
Hmm.
check out what houses hold Capricorn and Taurus in your chart. It's going to be a big yeah, that's going to be a helpful place. So then yeah, on February 2nd we reach that last quarter phase of the moon.
Hmm. And then we're like at the midpoint of the season. So
Yes.
boom. Yeah.
And then at that point, we've got Mercury going into Aquarius. So
Mhm.
Mercury joins Aquarius. And then at that point, we've got some Chiron transits going on, a square from Venus to Chiron, a sextile from the Sun to Chiron on the 5th,
Mm.
and then Mercury on the 5th conjuncts with Pluto. So, pay
Mhm.
attention to that 5th of February. With Mercury
Mhm.
conjuncting Pluto, you may
Mm.
hear some disturbing conversations.
Mm. Just Yeah, and also it's kicking off that kind of balsamic moon week.
Yeah.
Well, it's not a full week, but those few days. And a balsamic moon, the dark moon, this is a time to kind of withdraw, to do some of the inner work. So there's a lot of healing available that week with those contacts to both Chiron and the North Node, like around what we talked about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And,
Hmm.
I mean, I said something just now about angry conversations or something, or, deep, powerful conversations, but also just, the necessity, especially because it is coming right there as the balsamic phase is starting. It's really is a time to go inward and really work with the depths of your own thinking, your own mind, your own assumptions.
Mm.
So yeah, that's a powerful little piece right there.
Yeah, we're coming into that new moon. We do have some more of those nice kind of, trines and sextiles on the 7th. And then on the 8th, you have Sun square Uranus. So there's some kind of, I'm thinking of this as like you're doing your inner work that week. We're at the dark moon, you're, taking care of yourself. And then there's some kind of like abrupt awakening that happens, like something dawns on you that you maybe hadn't recognized before. And because the sun is in Aquarius, I think of something really coming into your mental space, like some new idea, some stroke of brilliance, perhaps. But it also can be, because it's a square, it could be disruptive too. But yeah, it's all part of that healing process coming into the new moon.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Right before that, Sun squares Uranus, Venus trines it
Hmm.
too. So it's sort of like there's some acceptance of something new, but then, a day or two later, it's like the abruptness, the disturbing piece that may have seemed fine 2 days ago, kind of
Hmm.
the deeper level dawns on you of the work that you need to do that's
Hmm.
involved with that.
Yeah, like the consequences of taking on a new viewpoint is like, oh,
Oh,
I
that's
have to
perfect. Yes.
rearrange these other things. Like, whoa, okay.
Or I've
So
got to
that's all.
explain myself to
Mhm.
somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then we come into the that new moon. It's happening at 20 degrees of Aquarius. So this is the kind of, at this time, you've got the sun and the moon in Aquarius, and then you also have Mercury in Aquarius and of course Pluto. So you've got a fair amount of Aquarius going on, but that's the time to really plant the seed for something new. So this is when you may get this, maybe what that whole Sun square Uranus thing is, that the tear in the fabric, the like, suddenly you can see into the future and you're like, oh my God, like I'm gonna have to do all these things. And so at that new moon, you really have this opportunity to go, oh wow, I just got this whole new download and I need to plant a seed for a radically new direction in some place or other in your life. Something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, because that new moon is so tightly um in that square with Uranus.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not only
Mhm.
happening in Aquarius, but it's squaring the co-ruler of Aquarius. Yeah, some
Yeah.
big download. So plant a
Mhm.
seed to be able to accept the path forward, to
Mhm.
be able to open your mind wide enough to allow yourself to work with the changes that are coming. You're going to be able to
Mhm.
see them. Whatever
Yeah.
these changes are, you've already gotten a glimpse. Back last spring, you got a tiny glimpse. Now you're getting a much wider view, and you really have to start doing some, if you haven't already, start doing some serious work to prepare for the future.
Yeah. Yeah, and then after that, the moon's going to start gaining in light again. So, we're in the waxing phase, for the rest of the season, essentially. Where, I mean, for sure. And there's some more, it's interesting. There's like a few more flows happening. First of all, you have Mercury squaring Jupiter on February 10th. Again, we don't worry, you're not too worried about squares of Jupiter because Jupiter is such a like benefic planet, really. But it doesn't mean it's just going to be all easy. There's still some growth that needs to happen here. This growth, it's almost like you had the new idea and that day is going to be your first like new tangible steps to something. But Jupiter is going to be there to support you as long as you embrace the challenge of growth. As long as you're like, yep, I'm ready to grow, then you can access that. So that's something you want to think about that next day. And then on the 13th, Mars is going to join the fray and enter Aquarius. Um, and then Venus sextiles Neptune at that point, too. So there's a little bit of like Mars is like, okay, I'm going in, you know, and then Venus is like, hold on, I can get some ideas about transcendence. Just give me a moment, you know. So there's something like that happening, which could be really helpful. Bring in something a little softer right before this really, really powerful conjunction on Valentine's Day.
Yeah, one of the things that makes me think of, Jenny, is yeah, Pluto, Mars goes into Aquarius. It knows it's about ready to face Pluto. It's here we are at the 13th of February, the day before Valentine's Day. We've got that little what you were talking about, the Venus Neptune. It's like, oh, but tomorrow's Valentine's Day and it's all about love. But then on Valentine's Day, Mars conjuncts with Pluto. That's
This
an
is
intent. I mean,
ah,
we've got Mars and Pluto. That's a really powerful combination.
bam, that really is
Bam.
woof. Like, so
Yeah,
something happened in there. And also remember that those conjunctions are the ending of one cycle and the beginning of a new cycle. So that is something that's something that's cool about it. But wow, that's potent for Valentine's Day. I'm like, yeah. I
it's
don't know what to
very
say about
potent for Valentine's Day. And it's funny, Jenny, you and I were talking earlier when we were first looking at this about how odd it is that Valentine's Day happens in the middle of the most cool, emotionally cool sign. Why does Valentine's Day happen during Aquarius season? I can't even imagine. It's
Well,
maybe we're trying to reconnect in the middle of this disconnected time or
I
something.
know.
But
Good
yeah,
point.
that's going to be a
Mm,
very powerful time. And like you said,
mhm.
Jenny, it's when any two planets conjunct, it's the beginning of a cycle. Mars is basically a 2-year cycle. So you're planting a seed, and any of these conjunctions you can think of similarly to a new moon. You can do a
Mm,
ritual, plant a seed of real empowerment in your path forward.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, handling those two energies together, I mean, it's a little bit just like knowing how to handle a stick of dynamite, you know, like you've got to set some parameters and especially in Aquarius and get clear about what you need to do with it. And then like it can be, I mean, it can be something um like I mean, like dynamite, that's how you make a road, right? You got to blow up some hills so that you can make a road through something. So yes, very powerful potential for destruction, but also put destruction in the name of what? And this is kind of this whole point of Aquarius season is aligning yourself with the process of change and allowing there's some things that do need to be destroyed. I mean, there are structures and ways of thinking, you know, at this time that are they need to change, you know. So very interesting. I mean, powerful time.
Yeah.
And also extra interesting to me. So then the very next day on the 15th, you have these two sextiles where Mercury is going to sextile Chiron and the North Node. And remember, again, that Chiron North Node connection is about healing. I mean, what I like to think of as the use of masculine energy. I don't mean male, female. I mean, every single one of us has a Mars and has, you know, Aries somewhere in our chart and has to learn how to wield this energy in a more positive way because right now it's way out of balance and it's harming everybody. So this is a time to really work with that energy yourself. You might say, how do I do that? Well, my example is if you're driving down the road and you get road rage, it might be helpful to remember this is part of that energy because that's where you get and you have that stress response. Perfect time to be like, hold on, just let's just take a breath and just notice your own tendency towards aggression. That's the type of thing I'm talking about. Tuning into your own internal, because I know I struggle with that. I might be in a perfectly good mood and somebody cuts me off in traffic, and all of a sudden I want them to die. You know? And
That's
so
so funny. That's
I just
so
want.
funny.
I just want to give you all an example. So it isn't about like these massive picture changes, because we can't all be in control of those.
Right. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
thing. There are places where we all can tap into that kind of rage, and it is important to think about transforming that.
Yeah, and recognizing it in yourself, and also
Recognizing
not
it. Yeah.
chastising yourself for it, but recognizing it. Go, wouldn't it be better if I employed that energy in some other way? You know, I mean, that's really what we're. You can't always do it perfectly, but just putting the seed in your mind, because actually that day on the 15th is an opportunity to do something different with it. And then we
Yeah.
have the first quarter moon on the 16th in Taurus. Um, and geez, that's the same day that Venus goes into Aquarius. Now it's
Yeah.
Venus's turn for her interview with
Venus is
Kali.
so yeah, it's really interesting. Like you mentioned right at the beginning of our conversation today that the season starts with the sun moving into Aquarius and no other planets in there. And at the end of Aquarius season, there's 5 planets in Aquarius. So that's really interesting. And I love that you brought in the fact, which I somehow had not noticed, that once Uranus turns direct, everybody's moving direct.
Mhm.
And that's an important thing. When everybody's
Yeah,
moving direct, life just does move forward more freely. Not necessarily more
yeah.
easily, but more freely.
Yeah. I think, actually when you're saying that, Lori, I mean, I think overall, I do feel like there's a little bit of a freight train feeling to with that all planets direct, and with Pluto moving to Aquarius and all these planets having to like start these whole brand new cycles with Pluto right away. And there is a little bit of that like runaway train feeling. And I think that there's kind of this whole, it's like that whole thing about like there's a lot we can't control here. And so there's a lot of just having to be like, wow, I have to accept that things are moving along really quickly. And then also getting clear about, but what are the things that you can do inside yourself in your own terrain, little shifts that you want to make in your life to help align yourself with these changes that are happening. And that can happen in our workplaces, that happens in our relationships, that happens with our parents, our children. I mean, it happens with our creative projects and on and on. So that's a little bit to me how the season feels. Hold on to your hats.
Hold on to your hats. Yeah, absolutely. So let's wrap up the so
Yeah.
yes, Venus goes in on the 16th. Mercury squares Uranus also on the 16th.
Hmm. And
Yep.
then
Pay
yeah,
attention to
that's
that. And then Venus conjuncts Pluto.
yeah.
Venus goes through that line just as the sun on the
Mm,
18th moves into Pisces.
yeah. So it's kind of these little like sweet spots of healing in this month. And all I can say is take advantage of those, because the rest of the time there's a lot of energy, and like these squares to Uranus and so on. There's a lot of energy buzzing around, and it's going to be pretty easy to feel a struggle with anxiety, or struggling with, whoa, things are out of control. So take advantage of those little yin moments that we mentioned, because those are really going to help you stay a little more centered and grounded when things are feeling haywire, because they are going to feel haywire, I think.
Yeah, it's
So
going to be it's going to be a very wild month, I would say. I'm going to
yeah.
hang on one second. Okay, so now we are going to go on and talk about the individual impact. And we're going to start out with those of you who have Aries rising. So if you've got Aries rising in your natal chart, this crazy wild Aquarius season is really highlighting the area of your chart, the 11th house. So wow, big changes for you when it comes to community. The 11th house is really, we think of it as community. We think of it as the area, not necessarily, your group of friends, but there can be an overlap with friends. I think of the 11th house very much as, like-minded people that support us to what we are about in this world. So, yeah, that can mean all kinds of things. It can mean all kinds of things for different people, but it's where you are really supported in community. So, as this season kicks off and Pluto moves in there, you might have some idea already of what changes are coming in that area from what occurred back in the springtime. You might have some awareness. But keep an eye out, because one of the things as Pluto goes in here, one of the things we've been talking about is how it can kind of create a tear in the fabric of what we have known in the past. And it can, in that tear, we can really see what is being transformed. Wherever Pluto moves, and, right now we can't separate these two because they both move in together. So during this season, we're really seeing how this area of our community is going to be transformed in the coming months. So this is what you're really working with this month, is recognizing, understanding, and preparing for the changes that are coming. It's really easy to get kind of fearful wherever Pluto moves when it makes such a big change as this. But you really want to understand that, what's going to be destroyed is what needs to be destroyed. And that is going to enable you to build what really needs to be created in this area of your life.
Nice. Yeah, and by the time we hit the new moon, which I'm just reminding myself, oh yeah, it's happening on February 9th. So that's kind of late on in the season. So you're going to really have a chance to understand what this area is about, like what is coming up to you. Maybe it's something in your professional affiliations, or, as Laurie's mentioning, I mean, it can be your cohorts. It's like all of these different topics that involve community. But by the time you hit that new moon, you're really going to have had a chance to see what things are shifting and to figure out how exactly you want to align yourself with this process of change, and kind of make yourself ready for these shifts so that you can be empowered in this area of your life rather than feeling like you're just getting steamrolled. So there's something about that. Like, so at that new moon, plant a seed for your mental vision of what you want to see in your community and what you're already seeing. And I will just say, trust your intuitive sense. And by that, I really mean those things that just pop in your mind like that, and you get this clear picture of where things need to go. So trust that and plant the seed at the Aquarius new moon.
Oh, that's great. That's
Yeah.
that's really great. And yeah, keep an eye out, especially at that new moon, for that spark. Really sparks because of the square to Uranus that happens right at that new moon. So you can expect some real strong spark of awareness, and plant the seed. That's awesome. That's lovely. Okay, so let's move on to folks who have Taurus rising.
Yeah, so those of you with Taurus rising, and I can think of a few folks I know well with this, this is happening in your 10th house of career. So, this Aquarius season, and along with this, big change of Pluto moving into Aquarius, I mean, this is lighting up something to do with your professional life. So something major is about to change in this area of your life. There's something very important happening that you just need to tune in with, and remember, like Aquarius is about these more kind of mental and inclusive, collaborative types of topics. So those of you with Taurus rising, you have this idea about, making shifts in the community through your profession anyway. Your mind is already in that direction. And so this Aquarius season is just really opening up the gate to a whole new way of doing something to do with your profession. And as Laurie and I've been talking, it's almost as if, the fabric of reality is going to split, where you're going to get this glimpse into this new possibility that lies ahead of you. And so that is so powerful to be able to have that sort of vision. So, there's one other thing I'll mention, is that it's easy to be afraid of Pluto and be like, oh my God, like what's coming? And I just invite you to, again, use those yin moments throughout the season to get grounded, to be calm, so that you can really let your mind think big in terms of what sort of change you want to see.
Right. That's beautiful. I love the way you said all of that, Jenny. And to remind you as well that I think it's on the 9th or the 7th, February 9th is the new moon. So that will be a point. It's sort of like you can think about the earlier part of the season between the beginning and the new moon as, you know, you're kind of just working through an understanding, really kind of gaining a little bit of clarity on where you're going with this. And then for the new moon, that's when you're really planting the seed for the healthy development of this new vision of what your career, what your vocation, what you want to create there. So take advantage of it's such a powerful season. It is so powerful. Don't let your fear stop you. Don't let your concerns stop you. You're going to really have an opportunity to plant a seed and do some incredibly powerful work ahead.
Lovely.
Okay, so we're going to
Fantastic.
move on to folks who have Gemini rising. So if you've got Gemini rising, this Aquarius season and all the incredible big change that is coming in this area is happening in your ninth house. Now, what an amazing place for it to happen, because the ninth house is really about your bigger, wider view of the world. We think of the ninth house as our world view, how we expand our understanding of the whole world. We think of the ninth house as travel, education, all the ways that our understanding expands. And when we've got both the sun and Pluto diving in here at the same time, it's like there is a profound opportunity to see in the distance, to see what's coming. We've been talking about it as sort of like there's a tear in the fabric of our understanding, and we can see what the profound change is ahead. But you know, it can be difficult. We can be very opinionated in our big world views, and it can be scary to think of changing those views, our understanding of the world. You know, really realizing that our worldview is kind of the basis of how we function in the world. So changing that can profoundly change every aspect of our lives. But this really gives you an opportunity to see what's ahead. And I like how you've been talking, Jennie, about just kind of using some of the moments of grace, some of the yin moments, some of the quieter moments throughout this season to kind of rest and acclimate ourselves to what these big changes are that are coming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in particular, we've been kind of thinking about that new moon, which happens on February 9th. And, you know, at that new moon, or actually right before it, you really do have a moment to kind of have a little internal moment for some internal healing during the balsamic moon. And then there's some sort of wake up, some clear knowing that happens. So by the time we hit that new moon, you're really going to have a lot of understanding that you are ready to plant in the new seed, because
Mm.
there's a new I think of it as that intuitive thing that happens when a whole idea just drops into your head and you're like, whoa, where did that come from, you know? And it's a little bit like that. And so at that new moon, you're really going to be able to see, what way do I need my worldview to expand, you know, to include collective ideals, to include, you know, a much bigger vision than just, you know, sort of me, myself, and I, you know, like it's a really wonderful opportunity in a lot of ways. This is incredibly empowering. The ninth house has to do with, in a lot of ways, your identity. It's like an outspringing
Mhm.
of your identity, where you gain wisdom, where you have these experiences and gain in wisdom. So I think this is an extra powerful time for Gemini rising. I mean, what a cool thing to see. Like your mind can really open to a whole new level of things, and you maybe thought was possible during this season. So yeah,
Absolutely.
use it well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's move on to folks who have Cancer rising, which I think I know someone with Cancer
Yeah. Oh, yes, indeed. Cancer rising, like, wow, this is this Aquarius season is blowing up your scene in terms of the way you deal with other people's baggage, heavy emotions, values, those things that when you meet somebody and you see the sort of surface level, but you may not see, it may take you a long time to see what's beneath the surface. And so, those of you with Cancer rising, you're experiencing a major transformation in the way you handle, kind of other people's stuff. I was thinking earlier, this is a good placement for, anyone who's doing any sort of work with people on a one-on-one therapeutic type basis where you're hearing about their difficult things, so there's some kind of transformation afoot regarding how you set those boundaries. And with Aquarius here anyway, you do have the tendency to be able to kind of separate from other people's intense stuff to some degree. And then the trick here is like, but you don't want to be alienated. So again, you're trying to find that sweet spot in the eighth house. It also implies you may be somebody who wants to see some sort of social reform. You would like to see big change happen in society, and you'd like to see that change happen from a deep place where people deal with their own deep emotions. So all of those things are kind of on the table. You just kind of have to decide for you, Cancer rising, like what fits for you, which of those storylines might fit some of the stuff you're dealing with in your life right now. And also just be aware, like, there certainly can be fear here. I mean, anywhere Pluto moves, it can suggest people kind of get freaked out. And there is change that has to do with how you deal with this. But if you can align yourself with the process of the changes happening here and embrace that and enroll yourself in the school of rituals and boundaries, then there can be a profound benefit here and allow you to evolve into a way that you may not have even thought was possible. So.
It's so great. I think about, thinking about how we've been talking about it as a tear in the fabric that kind of shows us what it is that's going to profoundly be changed. And the whole idea of thinking about in the coming years, this being a little moment where we can see that in the coming years, you're going to be really, really required to profoundly change the boundaries, the way you set boundaries, the way you work with ritual. I think those are so important. And the new moon, which comes on February 9th, this is going to be, it's sort of like as we're moving through this process, throughout the beginning of the season, we come to this point of the new moon where we really understand. We might be kind of confused and just kind of muddling through trying to understand what it is we're seeing. But at that new moon, we've got enough clarity that we know the seed to plant. So for you with Cancer rising, you're planting a seed of really finding that sweet spot that Jennie was talking about, where, you're setting boundaries that work for you and the people you're with without setting them so tight and with such a, it's that finding that sweet spot.
Yeah. And something else popped in my head, Laura, as you're talking too, which is the idea that Aquarius is about democratic ideals. And so those of you with Cancer rising and this in the eighth house, it's time to take those democratic ideals and really incorporate them into your one-on-one work with other people, because that eighth house really kind of brings that in. So it's kind of like allowing, and that's what's going to help you not be alienating, not going into that direction where you're cut off, but where you're really able to say, incorporate those democratic ideals into personal connections.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Nice. Okay, let's move on then to folks who have Leo rising. Okay, so if you have Leo rising, this incredibly powerful Aquarius season kicks off and impacts your seventh house. The seventh house is our one-on-one relationships. A lot of people think of the seventh house as, your spouse, which it certainly will involve spouse relationships, romantic relationships, but also business partnerships, close one-on-one friendships can be part of this seventh house. With Pluto and the sun moving in here basically simultaneously, The sun is really, it's really showing us that this is an area that is going to really bring profound change into our lives in the coming years. And during this Aquarius season, we really are given a view of that, a sort of an advanced view of the changes that are coming. We've been talking about it a lot as a tear in the fabric of time, where we can see what may have been obscured before. If you think back to the springtime when Pluto dipped in here a little bit, you might have some ideas of what this is bringing. But what we know is it's bringing a lot of change. You want to really think about not letting fear take over, especially in the seventh house. I think it's easy to think, oh, major transformation in my relationship. Oh my God, my my major relationship is going to fall apart. And, maybe it will, maybe it won't. There is bound to be profound change within any one-on-one partnerships. The other thing you want to understand is that this is about you in partnership. You are going to change. And we really need to be aware of the fear that might come up at this time without letting it take over and control us. We need to work with it. So, what are the changes that you imagine? Pluto's job isn't just to blow things up for the sake of blowing things up. Pluto's job is to destroy whatever is in the way of necessary transformation. So, what is necessary that needs to be changed in a partnership or in just how you approach partnership? Those are the things that you really want to think about and prepare yourself for the changes that are needed.
Nicely said. Yeah. Yeah. So, a big piece of this is our new moon is coming up on February 9th. So by the time that new moon in Aquarius hits, you're going to have had some time to kind of contend with this change that's happening. You're going to start understanding more about what that change involves for you on a personal level. And especially that week leading to the new moon. I mean, any week leading up to the new moon is a time of letting go, a time of kind of doing some inner work, finding some inner stability, because the astrology really suggests this kind of like dynamite idea landing in your mind, like right the day before the new moon. So if you've done your healing work and you've made space for that, then you can let this, totally innovative, even radical new thing enter your mind and drop in. And so by the time you get to this new moon and you plant the seed for this whole new view, you are ready for the empowerment that Pluto represents. Rather than being afraid, you are ready for this shift and you're stepping into a new level of evolution for yourself. And that's really the meaning of all this. So, really take advantage of those chill times to ground yourself so that you can handle this pretty intense download that is all for your evolution. So, yeah,
Yeah,
that's what to think of.
I love thinking about that, really thinking about somebody with Leo rising has Aquarius on that line. So, chances
Mhm.
are that you are not someone who has been, you've always had a bit of an interest in other forms of relationship. Maybe
Mhm.
there's more freedom in your ideas of what relationship could be than maybe a lot of other people would have anyway. So,
Mhm.
keep that with you and just develop your ideas and your thinking of what you can create in relationship for yourself and for the
Mhm.
people in your life. That's
Nice.
lovely. Okay, let's
Wow.
move on to folks who have Virgo rising.
Okay, so Virgo rising, all of this Aquarius, Pluto business is happening in your sixth house. So let's just talk about the sixth house for a minute. The sixth house is, in a word, it's routines. It's all of those routines that support your life, your work life, your health, the things that the concrete patterns that you develop to enable you to thrive, and move beyond just survival, but to thrive. So there's a lot of change happening here. As a Virgo rising person, you have Aquarius in the sixth house anyway. So there's some question around, on one hand, being able to get some space and taking a good hard mental look at whatever your routines are. But on the other hand, maybe getting too detached from those routines and not giving a toss for any routine at all. So really what you want to do for your health likes balance. So you want to find a bit more balance in this area of life. And this Aquarius season is providing you with an opportunity to make some kind of change that is not just going to affect you for the next few weeks, but that is going to affect you for a couple of decades. So this is a really important time to consider what those things are. I also like to think of the sixth house, it's also your routines. It has a little bit of a self-improvement feel to it, where maybe you need to get some training in a certain area so that you know what to do. Like a perfect example would be like that you want to try take up a new form of meditation, and so you go and get a training, and really learn what is involved in a totally different kind of meditation, just as an example. But you can apply that to any sort of routine or practice, or even like your eating. Like this can refer to eating, and how do you eat? How can you be more healthy? There's a big push in general in society right now to really move more towards as many sort of fruits and vegetables and things as you can eat, and trying to have a less of a footprint. So all of these things are things that matter, and have not only importance for you and your health, but also have an impact on the collective. If you make changes in those things, you will also affect other people that similarly. So really interesting and powerful time. It's really easy to get freaked out about Pluto and be like, oh my God, it's moving into this like physical health part of my life. Like, oh God. And I would just say, take a deep breath. Take advantage of the kind of more yin elements of the season, where you can get grounded and calm down and soothe yourself, so that you can take a look at this in a more positive way and just ask yourself, what do you need to transform? What do you need to do to align yourself with these natural processes that will help you be more healthy, that will help you have a little more space, not anxiety? So that's kind of what we're aiming for here with this whole Aquarius season.
Yeah, I think that's great. I love how you talked about that. It's difficult not to get a little freaked out about Pluto moving into the house of your health. But if you pay attention and you know that Pluto was in there for a little while back in the spring, what was going on at that time? What kind of wake-up calls did you maybe get around different things that needed to change in how you care for yourself? And, thinking about as we travel into this Aquarius season, and what we talked about at the beginning of the video, and some of the kind of nicer aspects that happen that kind of soothe us into some of this. We want to think about the new moon. The new moon is happening on February 9th. And by that time, that tear in the fabric that's giving us a view of what it is we're headed toward it's given us a clear enough view by the new moon that we should be really clear on the seed that we need to plant. And the seed that you need to plant, if you've got Virgo rising, is going to have something to do with, your routines, your day-to-day self-care. You're going to know what seed to plant that's going to really support the process.
Mm-hmm. Lovely.
Okay, so let's move on to folks who have Libra rising. Okay, so if you've got Libra rising, this is kind of exciting. I like this one. Yes. Because this brings this major, incredibly powerful Aquarius season, brings the focus into your fifth house. So first, let's get clear about what the fifth house is. The fifth house It's the house of fun, for one thing, right? It's the house of creativity. It's the area of our life that really represents how we give of ourselves in the most positive manner. People talk about that fifth house as being the house of children, the house of love affairs, the house of creativity. Let's be real, it's not the hard work of children. It's the expression of love that we give
Mm,
to them. I think that fifth house really, more than anything else, to me, it's how we give of ourselves. So
mm,
what happens here at this Aquarius season, when the sun and Pluto basically step into that house hand in hand, it's like there becomes this clarity. We've been talking about it as like a tear in the fabric that shows us what the profound changes are that are coming over, yeah, the next few decades as Pluto goes through there. There's profound changes going to be coming along in this area. So give some thought to what changes you might have seen in the spring. Maybe there's some creative project that you really have had a dream about forever that you really are ready to dive into. Or, it could be about having children or anything along
mm,
those lines. It
mm,
also, one of the things that Jenny, you often say about the fifth house is about risk.
mm,
What kind of risks that you imagine leading you to this playful self-expression. There
mm,
may be some of those that you can see forward are really going to become a part of your life.
mm. Nice. Yeah, and we've been talking a lot about just how the new moon comes kind of later in the season. It comes after the midway point. It happens on February 9th. And at that new moon, like by the time you reach this new moon, you're going to have had a chance to really work with this Aquarius energy. And as Laurie was saying, kind of getting that glimpse into either future you or future projects or future something that you're looking at, that has to do with your giving of love, something you want to pour your love into. So you're getting that little glimpse ahead of time. So by the time you hit that new moon, you're going to be ready to plant a seed for something, original, something totally
Mm.
dynamic, something maybe even radical. And the part leading up to that new moon, there's some really therapeutic little bits in there that sort of imply, hey, you know what? Get grounded, calm down, like calm your nervous system. Because the day before this new moon, the sun squares Uranus, and that is a symbol for this some sort of immediate download that can arrive in your mind, possibly, that's going to give you this inspiration for something new and different that maybe you didn't expect, that will go into that seed planting on February 9th. So just be prepared for that. Take advantage of the moments of quiet. And the other thing I was thinking, because I do love this fifth house, and sometimes it's funny to express all of what it entails. But you said the word self-expression, and ultimately it's an extension of your identity, the fifth house, where you really get to express something deeply internal and share it with the world. And so it can also be recreational pursuits. Like I have a friend with Libra rising, and she's an awesome snowboarder. And I just was thinking about that, at this image of carving on snow, like as part of how you transform yourself. So there's that element to it. It can be more about the arts, or even like theater, or any of those other recreational pursuits, as well as volunteering for something. So there's a lot going on here. And I really encourage those of you Libra rising, think it through, think about your life, think about what this really means for you, and really take advantage of that new moon on February 9th to do something different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Inspiration. You said something about inspiration. Yeah, there's just such an
Mhm.
inspirational quality to that fifth
Mhm.
house. That's really lovely. Okay, so we're going to move on now to folks who have Scorpio rising.
Ooh la la.
Mm.
Scorpio rising. You folks have Aquarius in the fourth house. The fourth house is the very foundation of your whole chart. So it's your foundation in terms of your inner or emotional foundation, which is probably the most inward form of it. And then it's also your foundation in terms of your home, your physical house, the family, the people in the home that support you and love you and help you feel stable. And then it also can extend down into your ancestry. The lineage that you have been given in this lifetime also comes through the fourth house. So with those of you with Aquarius rising, this is quite a powerful place for this to be happening, because it does imply something brand new that needs to be part of your foundation. Aquarius is a shakeup. Aquarius shows something brand new coming through, like cracks in the pavement where something grows through it. So there is something with Pluto here. There is a big change happening at that very bottom level. So I really see how, we've been talking about how this can create fear. Yeah, this can create fear when you're going, oh my God, my foundation might crack. Like, you don't want your foundation to crack. Like, that's totally understandable. But the truth is that it's allowing for something new to come in. Change is inevitable. All of us have to deal with it. So those of you with Scorpio rising, by allowing this change at the most fundamental place, most private place in your astrology chart, it's kind of like how you align yourself with this process of change and go with it, the more you're going to actually be supportive of other people going through change, because you're going to be like, whoa, I had to do that at a really deep level and be able to be in a position to support other people, especially with that kind of humanitarian focus of Aquarius. It's pretty interesting to think about that. But always, like when I see Pluto going into a fourth house or being conjunct the IC, which is the lowest part of the chart, it often means a move, something really big, something wildly different than what you ever even thought of. It could be just moving to a new town, but it could be moving across the world.
Yeah.
So also just bear that in mind, that could be it could be something that direct. And take advantage, like the first part of the season, you're really going to be able to get a glimpse of what that even means and what that might be. So pay attention to that.
Yeah. Yeah, profound changes in your home, in your family, in your understanding of your ancestry. There's just keep an eye for that little tear in the fabric that's going to show you what the future is really bringing. And by the time, the other thing that we want to touch on is that the new moon happens on February 9th. And you want to, by the time the 9th comes, we've already been through so much of the process of this season. And if you didn't listen to the first part of this video, I would really encourage you to do so, because we covered a lot of stuff there that is going to be helpful for everyone. And by the time we reach that new moon, we're going to have a lot of clarity. We're going to have a lot of clarity on what it is, what the seed is that you need to be planting here. And, it really can be a big one. It really, with Pluto being so hand in hand with this Aquarius season, you can be planting a seed far beyond what you might think of. You might think, well, I'll plant a seed to, I don't know, paint the living room or have a party with my family or something, when in reality, it might be something far bigger. It might be the opportunity to plant a seed for, moving to Europe in 2 years, or, something more, more profound than what you initially imagined. By that new moon, you've had enough of a vision to really be able to understand what that seed can be. Okay.
All right.
I think we're ready to move on to folks who have Sagittarius rising. So if you've got Sagittarius rising, this incredibly powerful Aquarius season is occurring in your 3rd house. So first of all, let's think about what the 3rd house refers to. The 3rd house is really, it's about how we communicate, but it's sort of the day-to-day process of our intellect. It's it can involve relationships with sort of the people in our lives that we don't really choose, our
Mm.
siblings, our neighbors, our, the person we interact with when we stop at the thrift store or whatever it is, those people that are kind of involved with our lives, but we don't really choose them. So, there's a profoundness in what we can learn and gain from those relationships and from the learning that we gain in those relationships around communication. So with Pluto and the sun moving hand in hand together into this third house, it's like there's a opening, an awareness that will come to us if we're paying attention of how profound the changes in this area of our life can be over the coming years.
Mm.
Something about how you use your voice, how you interact in those relationships, and how you use your voice, your communication skills. You might be just setting on a path to be a public speaker or to write a novel or whatever it might be. But in the process of this period of time, you can start to see the huge changes that can be coming in that area.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's really interesting for those of you who have Sagittarius rising, like how you have this like broad kind of idealistic humanitarian focus and you bring it right into the commonplace, like right into the purview of the common person, that person in the grocery store, that person walking down the street. And I love that. That's a really nice way. It dovetails beautifully with the Sagittarius rising, the expansive vision that Sagittarius has, and it kind of brings in this really progressive, democratic, idealistic viewpoint just for the average Joe, And I think that is great because that's kind of like that's where the rubber meets the road, I think, as far as working with people. So anyway, um, now, there's a new moon on February 9th. So when we get to that new moon in Aquarius on February 9th, you're going to have had an opportunity to kind of observe what major change seems to be afoot in this area of your life. What is going on in your neighborhood or with your siblings or in the way that you talk and speak to others. So you're going to have an opportunity by then to kind of be like, I feel that something is shifting. And I would really encourage you to take advantage of any and all moments of quiet and peace that you might get, especially the week before the new moon, because the more you can feel anchored and grounded, the more you can be ready for some kind of major mental or intellectual download that seems to be hovering the day before this new moon as the sun squares Uranus.
Mm.
So there's something, just some cool new idea, something you may never have occurred to you before that drops in and gives you the opportunity to plant a new seed in your life that incorporates a new understanding. So it is powerful. That is a powerful switch. So, set aside fears, take the time to ground your animal body so that you can handle the mental shifts because if it's very empowering and it is necessary with everything else that's going on in the world right now. So yep, so that's
Absolutely.
that's what I'm thinking of with the new moon. So
Awesome. Okay, let's move on to folks who have Capricorn
we're
rising. Mhm.
Okay, so those of you with Capricorn rising, you have Aquarius in the second house. So, interesting because the second house really refers to your values. It refers to how you value yourself. That was probably the most internal level. How you value your resources and your possessions and how those help and support you in your life. And then also how you deal with money. So, those are all topics that are related. And that's what the second house is about. It's kind of one of the thornier houses in the whole system. It's not the easiest place to cope with or fully understand for yourself. So the good news is with Aquarius here, you may be able to get some pretty good space and be able to kind of separate yourself from the harder places of this second house. So that's good. as long as you're not totally detached. I mean, you want to not go so far as to be detached. But at any rate, this Aquarius season is lighting up this area of your life. So now is a really good time to kind of get clear about what are the problems of this house. Like, are you struggling with valuing yourself? Do you have money problems? Is there some kind of something going on with resources? Just get an understanding about that, because you have this profound opportunity to do something different here. And it may well be, Lori and I have been talking a lot about this idea of there being like a tear in the fabric of reality, or like a new chink in the wall that you didn't see before, that you can peek through and get some clear understanding. I mean, there's a lot of that kind of signification happening. So, work with that, tune into that. Notice if you have some fear. If you're feeling fear, it's a really good time to just pause and check in with how you're feeling about yourself, and give yourself some love. Give yourself a little, I'm okay, I got this, that's going to be super helpful. But there's a lot of ability for empowerment here. There's something dramatic that can shift. And the goal is for you to work with those shifts rather than freaking out and fighting against it. So,
Absolutely. I
mhm,
think with the second house, you kind of alluded to the difficulty of the second house. And I think that it's a house that people with Capricorn rising can look at this and think, oh my God, Pluto moving into my second house, I'm going to suddenly be poverty stricken. And, people can hold so much fear around money and resources that
mhm,
seeing Pluto move in there, I can imagine might be quite stressful to a lot of people. But what you really need to understand is that Pluto's job is to empower.
mhm,
Pluto's job is to empower your self-worth and to empower your ability to create the resources that uphold your self-worth. That's its job. If your resources and your money is coming from a place that does not work in your own if it's not in integrity, or if it doesn't line up with your self-worth, then yeah, you very well might lose your access to that form of income. But
mhm,
the point is that Pluto destroys what is in the way of necessary transformation. So you want to think about that. And by the time the new moon comes, which is on February 9th, you've had enough opportunity to look at this, and hopefully you can really look at it with real clarity of vision, which Uranus kind of brings in through this season as well, that you can really see what it is that you need to let go of and what you need to begin. So by the new moon on the 9th, you should have the clarity to plant the seed that is going to ultimately empower not only your self-worth, but your income sources or your resources, whatever that might be.
mhm.
Yeah,
Yes, for your evolution. So,
exactly.
which isn't always the easiest, but the
Right.
shedding of new skins for new life. So,
Yeah, there's Pluto for you, shedding skins. Okay, so now we're going to move on to folks who have Aquarius rising. Oh, somehow we missed the little Aquarius symbol on this one. Oh, well, at any rate, if you have Aquarius rising, this Aquarius season is just lighting you up and your potential for change, your potential for transformation. This is very, very, very personal, because the first house, what does the first house refer to? It's you. It doesn't get more personal than this. So when we think about the sun and Pluto kind of moving hand in hand into Aquarius here, we can think of it, Jenny and I have been talking about it as a tear in the fabric of the future, or, these kind of dramatic images, but it really does, it's like there is a opportunity here for us to see the future changes that are coming. And for you with Aquarius rising, these are very personal changes. These are changes to your personality, to how you show up in the world and express your personality. I
Mm.
I always think of, I think of Pluto moving into the first house just can bring such, it can bring somebody who's so introverted into empowerment ultimately. And probably the reverse as well. But yeah, there's big change coming in just how you show up in the world. I was
Mm.
married to someone once when Pluto went into his first house.
Mm.
And it was an amazing thing to
Mm.
watch the transformation of the exterior self is really what occurred that was shocking to me at the time.
Mm.
So, think about that. What do you see as a change coming in just how you present yourself in the world?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty powerful having Pluto coming into your first house. It's very interesting. Yeah, I think that's interesting about your experience of having someone's appearance change so much. That certainly can be one of the first
Yeah.
things that you see as part of the first house. But the first house is hands down the most powerful house in the chart. It's also interesting though because it's so concerned with the self that sometimes it's things that you can't see because you're changing
Oh,
on the
yeah.
inside. You can't even see it. Other people can see it. But so that's an interesting phenomenon there. But at any rate, Lori and I have been talking a lot about this new moon that's coming on February 9th and how you're going to have had an opportunity by the time that new moon hits, you're going to have had a chance to really start to go, gosh, what's changing about myself, like about my self image, about my appearance? What fundamental shift is happening here? You're going to have had a chance to see that. And I really encourage you to use the kind of the few days before the new moon when we have the dark moon phase to do some healing work, to really ground yourself, like use whatever, tools that you have, whether you're a meditator, whether you go outside in nature a lot, use those things, give yourself some real internal, do some journaling, whatever it is that you like to do that brings you internal stability and joy. Really use those because by the time we get to that new moon, there's almost like a download that seems to be coming, like a real zzz of energy where it's possible some brand new idea you never ever considered before pops in your mind and it suddenly alters your trajectory of where you want to go. So, just be ready. And even if it isn't some big dramatic thing, like you will be served well by grounding yourself by taking advantage of those tools, and then allowing that change to come in and planting a new seed for new and different things. And, humanitarian vision, like your progressive ideals, all of those things are part of the Aquarius rising. So, mhm.
You're going to change who you are. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Okay, so now we're going to move on to folks who have Pisces rising.
Ooh, this is an interesting one, isn't it? So, like, Pisces rising means that this very profound change is happening completely behind the scenes. So by behind the scenes, I mean a few things. One is in your unconscious, the less conscious layers of your being, there's some kind of dramatic change that is happening as Pluto starts working on you in this behind the scenes way. So one example would be this would be a good time to, we know we talk about this a lot, but to have some therapy. To, if you're not in therapy, this could be a good time where it would be really fruitful and helpful, and you would come to a new level of understanding. What's really cool about having Aquarius in your 12th house is that you really have the tools to kind of get a little space from whatever those issues might be. If you're unpacking something really heavy from your past, your childhood, some sort of trauma or something like that, you do have the tools to create a little bubble of space around those things so that they don't pull you down and like try to drown you, because that's how it can feel when you're dealing with these really intense things. So it is a good time for that sort of work. It also could be more of a spiritual exploration where you're like, you know what? I'm going to go on that silent meditation retreat I've thought about for years, and I'm just going to do it. That could be another use of this, or simply going out in nature more alone and just enjoying some solitude. All of those things could be helpful ways to use this Aquarius season. If you live where there's snow, go out on some quiet cross-country skis by yourself. Go, commune with nature. Those would all be things that would be helpful during the Aquarius season. And again, like, what's funny about this is we keep thinking about this little like new view, this like tear in the fabric of time, where you're going to get to project yourself into the future a little bit and see what the future holds. So there's some kind of window opening. And Laurie, this is where I'm thinking about our friend Mary Jo, who talks about the window in the back of the head in the 12th house, and just how that is very appropriate for this particular one, Pisces rising, having that window, clear, insight opening up in the back of your mind there. So anyway, pay attention to that. This could be a fruitful time. So
I think that I'm really glad you brought that up. And I know you're going to be seeing Mary Jo at some point in the next couple of weeks. And I want you to let her know that we talk about this
I
quite a
will.
bit on these videos. I don't know if she listens to them. But yeah, I think that that's a very useful way to think about the 12th house. And with Pluto moving in there, yeah, this profound ability is coming to see within your unconscious in a way that probably most people never have the opportunity to do so. And this really allows you, whether it be from a psychological perspective or a spiritual perspective, there is an incredibly powerful opening for you to understand what is hidden from view. So what you want to, the other thing that we want to bring in here is the new moon, which happens on February 9th. By that time, if you are just kind of, be sure to watch the very beginning part of this video, because we talk a lot about the whole process getting there. But especially after, the week that leads up to the new moon, the balsamic phase, when, we're kind of just looking around and paying attention. By the new moon, we really should have clarity. If you've got Pisces rising, you should really have clarity of what the seed is you want to plant. And it may be, like Jennie said, it may be time to find a therapist. I would say, when it comes to the whole issue of therapy, when there's a big important planet moving through the 12th house, we often talk about it's a good time for therapy. And I always worry that people are going to think, oh, you think whatever. But it's just, it's a time that's so fruitful. It's a time when you are able to really work in some of those deep areas. So, you might be planting a seed to do that, to get a therapist, but make sure it's a good one. Or, just on the other hand, just doing, making a commitment to your own individual path of inner exploration. This is going to be a really important thing going forward.
Yeah, the other thing I want to add, because we've really focused on the internal piece with the 12th house, which it is internal, but there's also, it is above the horizon, so it is a collective house. And one thing the 12th house also signifies is power behind the scenes. And with Pluto moving into your 12th house, you are empowered to step into a new place of power behind the scenes, because this is also placement for administration types of things, like those people pulling the levers of power. I can think of somebody with displacement, running for public office, things like that. So just be aware. The internal face is that you should do the internal work, because if you are in a position of power like that, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that power too, to quote Spider-Man. But anyway, it's true. Anyway, I just want to point that out, because the 12th house does have this power to impact the collective on a level that you have no idea about necessarily. I mean, so yeah, I
am so glad you brought that up. I'm so glad. I think that is so important to understand the power that someone who never shows up, like politics, somebody behind the scenes pulling the levers is actually having an incredible impact on the bigger picture. And I'm so glad you brought that up with the 12th house. I often tend to forget that. So there you have it. I think, Jenny, that we managed to go through all 12 signs and our whole conversation. And now my cat is awake and wants to
Time
join
to go.
the show. Here he is. And he
He's
wants
so
to say
cute.
hello.
Cute.
Okay, thank you,
All right.
everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you,
Thank
Lori.
you, thank you. Bye-bye.